can become violent. Uh, it has unique footprints between 14 to 18 plus inches. Not only are the Bigfoot, the footprints big, but they also tend to be wide and unique. And it's no coincidence that the Indian and written historical accounts say virtually the same thing, because they're talking about the same creatures in the same basic area of North America. I mean, the correlation's there. I mean, you don't have people reading or finding about stories from the 1800s and earlier and incorporating them into their, new modern myth. That's just not going to happen. And once more, a lot of the evidence that was collected at this time over the years, with our new modern techniques and computers, has verified some of the evidence. One of the most recent of which is the Patterson film. Through computer enhancing and mechanics, they were able to discern a more detailed face of the creature from the Patterson film. Not only that, they were able to discern movement, eye blinking, movement in the facial muscles, which virtually without a doubt proves that it's a legitimate animal and not a person in a suit that could have been faked at that time. Which I always thought it was a legitimate film. It always seemed legitimate. So sometimes you can have an eye for what's fake and what's not. And to me, that film always had the air of something real. Not that the Bigfoot question rested on whether or not that film was authentic or not. And a lot of times, Bigfoot debunkers would try to pin that on it and say, well, it's not real. And they would come up with any excuse or what they would think is an inconsistency and try to say, well, hey, this isn't real. And because this isn't real, because this is what started the whole Bigfoot fever in America, the whole issue isn't real. But like I said, seeing through the historical records, and that the consistency is just too consistent. They didn't have the internet back then. They didn't have people who, especially in those early sightings in the 60s and the 50s, they didn't have books all over the place talking about Bigfoot and what to look for to prime them to think that they're seeing it or to pretend that they are. Also, the footprints. They recently did a study where they took hundreds of the most authentic footprint castings, some of which had dermal ridges, which is basically you have your fingerprints on your hand and you have fingerprints on your feet. And on newer ones, they found one. And they found older castings that had dermal ridges on the feet. Those can't be faked. They have to be a real living thing on it. And they took those and they did a study of the sizes, because science would say that if you have a breeding population, not all the footprints are going to be the same. There should be a systematic variance for when you have younger creatures to older creatures if there's a breeding population. And through the experiment, they found out that there was a correlation, that you could take these varying size footprints of these legitimate Bigfoot casts. You got exactly what you would expect to get if you had a breeding population and variation of size of the feet. And those are two big pieces of evidence that point to this is real. And these creatures are not just in the United States and Canada, but they've been seen in Asia, Australia, and virtually every other continent have had hairy wild man stories at some point or another. So what is it? Well, there's kind of two thoughts on it, and I'm kind of stuck in between. Because over the years, looking at the stories and having an intense interest, especially in the Bigfoot story, you could see where it could be a legitimate animal. You could see that maybe it is some type of ape, upright walking ape. Although that would be pretty unique, because no other creature but man walks on 2 feet and has anywhere near an opposable thumb, a usable opposable thumb, which they seem to have, which would make it a very unique animal. Like I said, a lot of the stories follow that, but also we don't have one in captivity. But But it's, a lot of hands it seems natural. But if you take into account those few stories that are out there about a potential UFO connection, then you get a totally different story. Then you have to look at it from the viewpoint, well, it's not a natural animal. It's not a naturally God-created animal. It would be more in the order of the Nephilim, the giants in the land that were on the earth before and after the flood. Especially that last story that had the UFO where the older brother shot at it, where the UFO, where the Bigfoot raises its arms and the UFO disappears, and then later on the boy who shot it becomes affected, either possessed or oppressed and made to act a certain way, which falls right in line with demonic powers, spiritual powers. And the tales that the Indians tell, that some of them tell them that they're spirit beings, not just wild men. But it's hard to know because it's still in between, and a lot of Bigfoot researchers shy away from the Bigfoot and UFO research because people tend to look at it through their eyes, and so those who look at it as a legitimate creature don't want to hear wild stories of UFOs because they feel that's a separate issue. They don't want to mix the issue, and those who are into UFOs don't want to bring the negatives that they might see of people who believe in Bigfoot into their line of research. They're almost mutually exclusive. Very few want to merge the two. So some of the stories that may have existed that point to more toward this are not looked into and are potentially hidden. And so until one's found, we won't really know, which might explain why they don't get found. I mean, there have been people who claim that tracks disappear, that they see one, they follow tracks, and the tracks disappear, as if they, go into another dimension, kind of like a ghost type thing. Yeah, that maybe, if the demonic factor is in there, the UFO factor. But you never know. If it's a natural creature, these things can move very fast and they can jump very far. And who knows, that they may have jumped into a tree or found a way to move to another location where their tracks wouldn't have been found. So those are all things you have to take into account when you objectively look at the evidence. Well, that's our show for now. We're definitely going to come back to this subject and other subjects similar to it and give more stories and evidences at a later time. And if you have any questions, comments, show ideas, want to drop me a line, tell me a story, or any questions about anything, I can be reached at rev1301@yahoo.com. That's rev1301@yahoo.com. And may God bless you and keep you. And remember, the Lord is with us always, even until the end of the age.
The devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur where the beast and the false prophet are, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. I also saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared like a bride adorned for her husband. Then I heard a loud voice from the throne. Look, God's dwelling is with men, and he will live with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them, and be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will exist no longer. Grief, crime, and pain will exist no longer, because the previous things have passed away.
The Revelation 13 podcast is hosted by Mike Hopwood and is a podcast dedicated to the study of end-time events, news events, and ancient mysteries.